So there was a study that said that children will choose to cook in the kitchen, if offered, over playing video games. Welcome to the True Health Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lonnie Bagwell, stress, inflammation, and functional health clinician.
And I'm your co-host, Brigitte Spurgeon, metabolism and nutrition expert.
This podcast is where we bring hope, truth, and inspiration for your holistic health journey.
Because the world needs the best version of you.
All right, so welcome back to True Health Solutions podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lonnie Bagwell, here with the
Brigitte Spurgeon.
And we are wrapping up our two-part series on raising healthy children. And I wanted to start off with where we ended last time. When we ended the last episode, we were talking about screen time and how it's negatively impacting the brain. And the truth is, it's impacting the brain negatively in ways that we don't even fully understand because we haven't lived long enough with that type of exposure to know the long-term repercussions. And really the solution, which today's the Solutions podcast from everything we talked about last time, and the solution is equally as unknown, as challenging to understand because, again, it hasn't been around long enough. But there have been some studies that have been going on for a little while, and they're starting to report the data in different age groups. And so I wanted to start, so something as simple as not doing it can still be considered a solution, even if it's not what people want to hear, right? And so what's the solution for the negative impact of the digital world on our children's brains that controls everything in their body? And here I have it. So from ages 0 to 2, the recommendation is 0 time in front of any kind of a screen. So no handing the phone, no iPads, no iPad holders onto the car carriers sitting in the back to get the babies to zone out completely and all that stuff. It's very clear. They said that there's absolutely zero benefit whatsoever and only a ton of detriment to all of those developing neural pathways up to the age of 2. And then as some of those pathways are being developed, there can be some exposure to those type of graphical digital things. And so, but then they said that between the ages of 2 and 5, the maximum, so this isn't like run it up to the max every day, right? But the maximum exposure should be 1 hour, again, or less, right? So maximum, no more than 60 minutes in a given day. So if that's 15 minutes to the grocery store, 15 minutes from the grocery store, that's half of it right there. And then at the same time, it's 15 minutes each way, 30 minutes, and then, maximum of 30 minutes for the rest of the day. And then for anybody that's 6+ as a part of this study and review of the data, they're talking about absolutely like completely unknown. They have no idea at that point. It starts to become a factor. Are they sleeping enough? Are they getting physical activity? Are they meeting other behavioral requirements for, developing proper health? And the best that we can start to do is try to, do ratios, they say, of like, if you're going to have, you should have 2 times as much physical activity as digital exposure, right? So if you're going to have 60 minutes, then you should be active for, the minimum requirement daily for children is 60 minutes, but even up to now 120 minutes to offset some of the negative effects of the digital, which to most parents that are listening to that right now, they're like, how's that even possible? And we agree. Like, the data is staggering of how negatively impactful the digital stuff is. So we just have to do the best that we can to reduce that, limit it, and get as much activity, have clean nutrition and other behavioral support. So any comments on that for you, Brigitte, as far as that digital exposure, behavioral changes, et cetera?
Yes, I would say that you, as a family, have to be intentional with getting outside, getting in the outdoors, sunshine, nature, like Dr. Bagwell said, activity as much as possible. So that means you have to be really intentional, whether that be your evening time and then also your weekend time. Value experiences as a family, and I would just structure them so that they are outdoors. I know Dr. Bagwell with his boys, he takes them camping and hiking, and they've really, their family culture is around the outdoors, and I love that. And some families, they may do it around travel experiences. Well, that's still great. It's like you just have to get them out the house, and they will embrace that. That is way more exciting. You want to create experiences that are more exciting than sitting in front of a screen or a game or a TV show. Give them an epic life as kids.
Amen. Exactly. That's the best way to put it. And that speaks a little bit to one of the other solutions, which is exercise. And most people don't even realize that the recommendation for total exercise in a day is 60 minutes, which I think I read the stat was only 1/3 of all children across the board of all ages are getting 60 minutes of actual exercise outside, right? Which, and if you think about it, a lot of times, I would say when they're younger, like you do go for little walks and things like that quite a bit. So it just really tells you about how much exercise older kids are not getting as they're being exposed to digital interventions, right? Just did the world of digital distraction. And also, and to speak more
Get an
about what you just said.
energetic dog
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right.
and
Exactly.
have the kids take the dog for walks 3 times a day, like we're
So
doing here in Ireland.
so many options, right, of just getting moving to some degree. But I like what you said, and it was absolutely a part of what we've talked about. Is there's a lot of things that kids have interest in, but we've always said, okay, you want to play chess and learn chess, or you want to learn the guitar, that's amazing, it's got incredible benefits for your brain, et cetera, et cetera. But you must do something active at the same time. We've never said you can just do something that's mentally stimulating, or definitely can't just do something that's digital mindless, right? You have to do something. So now my kids do things like competitive archery, again, backpacking, like anything that gets them outside, and improves hand-eye coordination, developing, continue to develop that. We're all for it and encourage it like nobody's business. And your kids will choose those things. You said it. I want to reiterate that they will choose the adventure. They will choose the adventure of their own life versus some mindless adventure that's caught behind a screen. Okay, like, and that leads us into what really the number one thing is. If you want your kids to be healthy, and nobody wants to hear this, right? But you have got to fully commit to being healthy, and living one step ahead of how healthy you want your children to be, right? That is our number one shared solution. We've talked about it before. We teach it all the time. um, you know, and I remember when Colin, my older son now, when he looked up at me, it would be just like you, Dad. And you shared a story on the last podcast about a dad and their children, and I remember looking up, and when he was a kid, he looked right up at me, and I was like having that melt moment, like you're just like trying to hold the tears back. And then as we continued to talk, I realized like he might think that as my son, but also he was referencing in that moment how big I was. He's like, I want to be big like you. And I just remember thinking that could mean a lot of things. Like I have a lot of work to do here, right? Because that could mean he wants to be, big and strong, right? That kind of thing. But also, I'm also showing him that big, unhealthy big is okay also. And it wasn't. And so it really started to get my mind turning of like, okay, like I teach a lot and we do a lot. Now I have to be a lot different. And so, that was the beginning of me taking responsibility, for what I was showing my children. And let's just be clear. I mean, our world's crazy. We got busyness all over the place, running all over and all that stuff, whatever. I don't get this perfect all the time. I mean, I think it's important to say that, like, I got to teach it how it is, right? We're going to teach truth, but I'm also going to share the truth about, like, about how I don't have a 100% perfect gluten-free life over the last 365 days, right? Like, like they're seeing me implore many of the rules that we teach them, but I'm also not operating outside of those rules, right? So one of the examples would be like, in that case, when it comes to food, be like the 80-20 rule. Like we don't, the 20% that they're consuming is certainly not the worst of the worst, right? They're not having like awful, disgusting, they're not eating high fructose corn syrup like we talked about the last episode. They're not having any of that, right? That's bad regardless. But we do raise them in such a way that their food that they're eating at home consistently is always organic, clean, pristine, right? So that when we are out, they can choose to have something that their friends are having and they don't feel like they're completely deprived.
Yeah, I would even say that perfectionism when it comes to food, that even becomes problematic in itself. So there
Yeah.
definitely is. I love the 80-20 or the 90-10. Or I think 80-20 is great for families because the 80% that like that's forming the foundation for their selves and their future, but they don't become obsessive about their
Mm-hmm.
nutrition. They don't stress about their nutrition, like hey, I'm out with friends, or I'm at a birthday party, it's not as big of a deal. But you know what happens, and you've probably seen this. But when they eat well at home and when they're on vacation with you and you're buying those good things, now they're making better choices by themselves when
Yeah,
they are out with friends or with other people, because they don't like the poor quality foods anymore.
that's right. And we that is exactly how it's worked out for us. And they know places. There's places that they've never eaten. Lots of fast food places they've never stepped foot in. And then they've been caught out on like when they ride with other families on like camping trips and stuff like that, and they stop at a fast food place, and they absolutely will choose the salad option, there, because that's the best thing, that so they can avoid most of the other stuff. So you're absolutely right. And again, it's about, like, our why has to be so big. And when I keep saying the word why, I just picture my two boys, like a picture of them in my face right now, and they're big enough for me to live differently so that they can live differently. And so, and to your point, like I shared this on another episode, we go to the beach and we have beach nachos. Like, we're eating nachos at the beach. It's a guarantee. It's a guarantee. 100% of the time we're going to have that, because that's one of our great family memories. But it's CHA chips, grain free, shredded goat cheddar. You know what I mean? It's all the healthiest version of that you could ever have. And they prefer that over any other nachos. Like, there's no nachos you can get at the restaurant. Why? Because we've trained that into them. There's a memory and emotion attached to it, right? And so if they want nachos, they want the ones that they've had many times with mom and dad, that they make together in the kitchen, et cetera. And I give all the credit to my wife for staying in there during the tough battles over eating avocado when they're little, before they could talk, and all those things. It's just something you have to be committed to for the long haul. And then when you're doing the 80-20 rule, you got to walk them through the 20% consistently. You can't just say 80-20 rule and then go do whatever you want. You walk them through the best choices. But now at ages 13 and 17, here in the next couple of weeks, then they're absolutely making amazing choices that blows me away. And I will be honest, like I said before, like, I know my food allergies, they know their food allergies. Like, we do testing, and they can, and they'll eat cleaner at some meals because of their food allergies than I do. Like, when we go out to eat, because I'll eat within mine and they'll eat within theirs, and their food actually ends up being cleaner, and nobody even talks about it. They just order accordingly. And even my little guy will order his own meal. Like, he knows exactly what he should be eating. And it's incredible. So, but the commitment comes from first, making sure that we're doing everything that we can to be healthy for them, and staying committed to that, long term. It just becomes more who they are. So, another big tip is to make it fun. And this is a study that has absolutely been true in my life, but it's the number one laugh that I've gotten from the scoff, the laugh, the rolled eyes that I've gotten from parents in 16 years. You ready for it? So there was a study that said that children will choose to cook in the kitchen, if offered, over playing video games. That's the quick summary of it. And every time that I've ever said that to parents, they'll about fall out of their chair in the middle of a workshop, right? They'll like give a loud laugh. But I'm telling you what, it's absolutely true for our family. It's absolutely true. Our kids will choose, and so will their kids. Everybody listen to this right now. Your children will choose. They love you. It's in their DNA to connect with you. If working towards healthy food together in the kitchen is about everything but food, right? And it's about the connection, the adventure of it, the learning possibilities of learning how to cook. If it speaks into their future, and it's like, you're going to have to know how to cook someday, and you need to learn how to cook healthy. You tell them the truth about how bad food actually creates disease in the body. And when they have children one day, they want to be around for as long as possible. You tell them the truth, and you connect, and it's out of love. They will choose that 100 out of 100 times over whatever game that they're addicted to on the Xbox or what PlayStation, whatever I don't even know if that's still a game console, right? But whatever the new stuff is out there right now, right? They will choose it 100% of the time. And that's what our kids do over and over again. Like, they'll choose to go shoot archery out back versus play a game. They'll choose to run an errand to the store about 75% of the time to spend time with dad, over doing something else. They'll choose absolutely choose to cook and prepare foods My little guy, like if you say, hey, we're going to make guacamole tonight for dinner, he'll literally stand in the kitchen just sitting there waiting for all the ingredients. Like he won't even do anything else. He like that's his thing. Like it's part of his, part of his repertoire of the recipes that he knows. So anyway, so just believe me when I tell you, give it a chance. Give it a chance. Just wait till the kids are playing the video games and then approach them with the right heart and with the right intention. And then when they do come down to participate, and you can make it a requirement at first, you could fight for it and make it a requirement. Like you have to do it, come on down, and then make it fun with the right heart, learning, etc. And I promise that with just a little bit of training, you will actually have a child who is excited to spend time with you in the kitchen versus any of these other things that actually create less health in their body. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think, I hear a lot from parents that their children don't have a diverse palate. So,
Mm-hmm.
so many times I hear that, well, my 11-year-old will only eat chicken nuggets and bread.
Yeah, that's another big one. Yeah.
Now, we can go back to, we have to start them young, having a diverse palate. We have to
Mm-hmm.
open their palate to a variety of vegetables, fruits, proteins, etc. But not some people are just now they're in that position where their children don't eat a lot of foods. Well, I think what you just shared is a great way to engage them when they're engaged in the preparation and the plating, or even in the grocery shopping. They're going to be more apt to try new dishes
Mm-hmm.
when they're part of creating
Absolutely.
it. So I think that could even be a Saturday project, is have a recipe that you're going to do as a family, or as a, mother, daughter, son, son, dad, something like that. And then even go to the farmer's market together, and, prepare the vegetables, prepare it together, plate it together, take pictures, like make a whole experience out
Yep.
of this healthy meal, and they're going to enjoy their own creation.
I love it. That's absolutely, it's so true. And it's been fun. And I hope that we continue to do that even into adulthood, that we can continue to share in those healthy lifestyle habits together. And certainly we'll be loving sitting back, celebrating as they're doing those same things, with their children. Um, and so the last thing that I kind of wanted to dive into when it comes to solutions, and I already started to talk about something related to it as far as testing. Like a lot of people would say, well, why would you test your kids? They don't have any symptoms. But remember, that's that medical mindset. It's like, wait till 65% of a disease process happens before you get the first symptoms. We're finding disease process in 8-year-olds on these autopsies, right? So we got to get that kind of way of thinking out of our mindset and just say our kids are stressed. Maybe to this point, if you're listening to this, maybe they haven't eaten the best foods. Whatever it is, like we have to assume that that there's some recovery that's required and some proactivity. If not recovery, then at least proactivity. And so we test, we don't guess. And so in the case when it comes to foods, there's stool testing, which is absolutely incredible for determining, how a child's immune system's working or not working properly, since 80% of the immune system, of course, is in the gut. We can look at food allergy testing, look at their skin health. Like there's so many things that we can look at. But the number one test, as a chiropractor, the number one miracle producing test, I guess, that I've ever seen for a child is an x-ray. And that's because of how that spine is impacting the nervous system, and their nervous system is their stress response system. And you look at all the kids we talked about in the last episode, the ADD, the ADHD, all the neurological based issues that we've kind of destroyed a lot of that neurology with our lifestyle and nutrition, things like that in our children, and medications. And now, I'm telling you that we can actually start to see, where's the interference? How long has it been there? How long would it take to correct? And we've seen incredible results over the years with correcting those x-rays and across the board with children's health issues. We're not saying chiropractic cures anything, but we are saying that when you remove interference, you take the x-rays, you can make a specific correction of interference that's happening. We see digestion get better. We see the ADHD and focus get better. Grades go up. We see if they do fight something, because kids will, we all fight stuff, viruses, bacteria, they're over it in 2 hours instead of 2 weeks. Right. And so this idea of testing and being proactive about our kids' health. And I guess the reason why I mention it here on this episode is because of just the stress factor. And I read that statistic uh, to you before, Bridget, but it says 80% of children are not in autonomic balance. And what does that mean? Well, our autonomic nervous system is broken into two parts, the sympathetics and the parasympathetics, right? The parasympathetics is where everybody wants to spend the bulk of their time because that's the rest, digest, recover, reproduce, right? That's where we want to spend the bulk of our time, and because then we're always moving forward with our health. And that builds health. The other side of the autonomics is the sympathetics, which is the fight, flight, freeze, flee, right? That whole side. And so what they're saying in this study is that over 80% of our kids are in sympathetic dominance. That means that they're spending most of their time in some kind of stress state, which is catabolic, or it breaks the body down and it creates broken cells and broken organs and disease. And so the number one way that and we do functional testing to help understand how to help people that have gotten into autonomic imbalances and stuff. But the number one way that we can help our kids get out of that autonomic imbalance and get into a parasympathetic state of rest, digest, recover, and heal is through clearing the nervous system. Any comments on that at all?
You know, I remember a dad referred his daughter to the clinic, and I remember having a conversation with the mom. And the reason why he was referring his daughter is because she had a really life disruptive psoriasis. Her whole body was just dealing with this skin irritation, and she couldn't even wear a coat in wintertime. And I remember having a conversation with her mom, and she said, I don't understand, like, why I'm not going to a dermatologist. I don't understand why I'm being referred to a chiropractor for my daughter's skin. And so I remember explaining the power of the nervous system and also of the gut. And sure enough, she came in. We made a couple of tweaks in her diet as well, and we focused on corrective chiropractic care. And it was amazing to see how her body healed itself.
I love it. Thank you very much for sharing that story.
And now you know who I'm talking about.
Amazing. And there's so many stories of, seizures resolving, and I mean, just quality of life improving across the board. And there's this, Anyway, it's I always say that my retirement's going to be 2 to 3 days a week of just seeing the kids, because that's the future, right? And it's so wildly impactful. And we covered so much fun stuff today. It's awesome. I mean, this is powerful stuff. If people are listening to this and you apply it, and we're here for you to help you apply it. But I mean, we talked about things like clearing the nervous system, right? Taking x-rays, testing, maybe doing other gut testing, right? We talked about starting with the why. Don't impose your own limiting beliefs, right? You have to do it first and have to be practicing it, but be real with your journey. Be real with your struggle with your kids. Don't be afraid. You don't have to be perfect. In fact, portraying perfection when you're not, because no one listening to this is one of the worst things that we can do with our kids. Make it fun, right? We talk about making it fun, doing things outside, getting the body moving 60 minutes a day. Lots of great tips here. So let's just end with a couple of your favorite suggestions for when it comes to nutrition. A couple of your favorite things that you've helped with either through the weight loss program, because most people probably don't even realize, listen to this right now, that you actually have helped many young adults or children, lose weight healthily and get their metabolics back in order. So what are some of your favorite things? I'll share maybe a couple of mine, and then that'll wrap up today's episode, but hopefully just be the beginning of a discussion around how do we help these kids get and stay healthy for the long haul. So what are your top kind of nutrition tips when it comes to the kiddos?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little deep on this one just because I see how the mindset around nutrition and weight and dieting impacts especially adult women. And it stems from maybe a relationship with a mother or an adult. And so I'm going to say really protect the mindset and the culture around nutrition in your home. Be careful that it doesn't become a dieting culture, or a restrictive
Hmm.
culture. So that's why diversity of nutrition is important. And that's why it's around having healthy, healing, whole food nutrition, diversity of nutrition, not around calorie restriction or quantity restriction. We just have to protect that with our children and protect their mindset. And I'm going to say, do everything in your power to speak beauty and worth and value into them. Never tell them like, don't criticize their nutrition or their body or their looks or their lifestyle. It's all about just speaking that worth and love and truth into them. You
Hmm.
educate them, but we don't want to do that in a critical way, because we want to make sure we're not only setting up their nutrition and health for
Hmm.
success, but we're setting up their mindset for
I love it.
success.
I love it. And we just forget that, well, like our issues, our sicknesses that we've dealt with, we need to not impute those onto our children and have them live a lifestyle congruent with that. And I was just sitting there thinking that things like the 80-20 rule, that works great for kids because they're generally really healthy, right? But if you do have a child, I just wanted to say this, if you do have a child that's struggling with a condition of some kind, then they really do need a consult so that we can, because things have to be modified at whatever age according to the physiological state of the person, right? So, I did want to say that. We say that on other episodes. I figure it'd be worth saying it here too. Like 80-20 rule works for kids. Sometimes it doesn't work for adults because you've lived 40 years of metabolically destructive lifestyle and nutrition, et cetera. So that's awesome because we have to realize we're different, we're separate, but also they're just so primed and set up for success. So much of it's just not getting in the way of that. Um, some really quick, like just recipes and just ideas when it comes to food for kids that are common in our home and that we see patients doing a lot. Smoothies are my absolute favorite. You can't go wrong with a smoothie, and you can get so much amazing nutrition in a smoothie. Simple recipes is just 1 cup of some kind of dairy alternative, a cup of fruit, and a couple tablespoons of some kind of healthy fat, like a raw almond butter or MCT oil, something along those lines. We love bone broth protein because that actually has a gut healing property. So knowing that kids are going to get exposed to toxicity that wrecks the gut, stress that's going to wreck the gut, it's always good to have that baseline of some kind of a bone broth protein or a collagen protein maybe in there to help the gut healing and recovery from the day-to-day exposures. Literally takes less than 3 minutes and they can have a full 500-calorie breakfast. I mean, right there in a cup. And then a lot of crossover things, like, so that same almond butter that goes in there can go into those fun things that we did as a kid, like ants on a log, right? Or, certainly we can even make sandwiches nowadays. And like, my kids want to have peanut butter and jelly, fine. So we go to raw almond butter or cashew butter. Maybe we use preserves instead of sugar infused jellies, and we use maybe even things like sprouted grain bread or like Ezekiel bread, right? So the children can still have some of their favorite things. We just have to use the substitution rule, so mimic their favorite thing with the appropriate substitutes. And one thing I'll speak to this because I know, and because I know that this will come up, is cost. It's true that those things can cost more money. Like, so Ezekiel bread costs more money than Wonder Bread. I'm not going to sit here and say that it doesn't. However, if you fully adopt this process and this lifestyle, then the things that we're no longer spending money on makes up the difference. And they've done this study, even in Time Magazine, put out an article with 2 different grocery carts. So it doesn't have to cost more net cost, but you can't keep buying all of the bad things, all of the snacks and sugary treats and stuff like that they shouldn't be having at all, and the new healthy stuff, right? Obviously, that's going to cost more. But if you take the money from those things and put it into the healthy, more nutrient dense things, and that's a beautiful thing too that we always teach, is that if you're eating more nutrient dense foods, you tend to you don't have the cravings for the unhealthy stuff, or you have it less, I should say, at the same time. So, ultimately, adopting the full lifestyle approach to nutrition really does not have to cost much more, or it doesn't have to cost more at all. Any comments on that from you there, Bridget?
Yeah, remember, by those things, you're also communicating worth. Like, your children are worth
Yeah,
buying
that's
the
good.
good stuff in the grocery store. And please don't be the parent who only buys the good organic stuff for yourself and buys the cheap snacks for your kids. Once again, it's communicating worth
Amen.
to your
Amen. So we
kids.
hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope you learned a lot. Again, the goal here is just to start the dialogue. These are conversation starters. These are lifestyle starters. We're here for you via phone, email. Make sure that you click the link and subscribe so that you get more episodes just like the one you heard today. And really, we look forward to teaching you more and hearing back from you here in the future. So thank you again for joining us on True Health Solutions Podcast. Thanks for joining us today on True Health Solutions Podcast. Make sure that you click to subscribe. Also, go to our website, www.truehealthcharlotte.com, where you can download any resources related to today's show or any future shows. And lastly, if you search for True Health Center Group on Facebook, you'll be able to join our free health community. We look forward to seeing you there.